Hi, I'm Larissa from Beekeeping Made Simple, and this video is my review of the Vevor 4-frame electric extractor. I am going to take it out of the box and show you how to assemble it, which takes like 30 seconds, really fast and easy. I am going to talk about my review after using it and include all the specs about the extractor, as well as some common questions people have about extractors when choosing one. Then we are going to extract some honey. I'm also going to show you what happens when you put a frame with no foundation into an extractor, and we'll see how it goes with this one. And as with all my videos, I try to include as many tips as I can and think about all of the mistakes I've made and all of the things that have gone wrong for myself and for the students that I talk to, so that you can avoid some of those beginner mistakes. I've been a beekeeper for 13 years. I started keeping bees in Pennsylvania with 2 top bar hives where I used the crush and strain method. It went horribly, it was a mess, and I only had like 2 frames to harvest. But then I went to take an internship at an apiary in Hawaii, and they had 30 hives, and they had this 4-frame electric extractor like the one in this video, but a lot older, and when you used it you needed like 2 people to hold this thing down because it just like shook like crazy. I went on to work for a larger apiary with thousands of hives, and they had a radial extractor. So there's 2 different kinds of extractors, and the radial extractor spins frames so that honey comes out of both sides of the frame. Whereas this type of extractor, I forget what this kind is called, but you have to flip the frames around, and that's what most hobby beekeepers would have. So they had the radial extractor, and that actually was gigantic, and you put the frames into a box like a honey super, and you would put the entire honey super into the extractor. And I don't know how many supers it held, maybe 8 or 12, and it spun the boxes. So it spun a lot of frames all at once. And then when I started working for myself and building my own apiary, I did a lot of comb honey because that's what I was able to sell. There's a lot of competition here in Hawaii to sell honey. A lot of people keeping bees. So I did mostly comb honey, and for the hotel I worked for, they had a hand crank extractor, 2-frame. I only had 4 beehives on the property, so that was sufficient for the 4 hives. Now I have this extractor. So I'm going to show you how to assemble it and my overall review of it. But of course, I'm making this long video about it because I overall recommend it. I think it is a good extractor. There is a link down below to go to the website where you can purchase this extractor, and there's also a coupon code. So if you put in the code VV2324, you will get 5% off. I do not get any kind of commission off of recommending this extractor, off of the sales, so I have nothing to gain. This is just my honest opinion. Just to let you know, one of the reasons why I'm including in the video how to assemble the extractor and how to use it instead of just doing the basic review is because there's not much in terms of instructions when it comes to what they sent. It has the name of the product. It says 4-frame honey extractor by electric. This product is used for honey separation industry. Usage: 1, put frame with honey in the honey extractor's inner frame. 2, close lid. Avoid honey spill when separate honey. 3, start switch. Not incredibly helpful. Maintenance: when extractor is not in use, should be cleaned with water. Cover lid at dry. Be careful, do not bump barrel when moving honey extractor so as not to deform the barrel. It might cause rotation of inner frame irregularity, even the barrel inner wall collision inner frame, or cause the leakage of honey from barrel. For the first time, please use after cleaning. Okay, so number 2, worded a little odd, but very important to keep in mind. If you have an extractor, be very careful with it. And this is one reason why I do not recommend people buying an extractor when they're first starting out and they don't know if they like keeping bees or if they're going to be harvesting much honey from their hives. Because extractors are not only big, but you can't just throw them in the garage with all of your other stuff, because if this thing gets dented, you might not be able to use it. So here are the legs. It comes with 3 legs. So here's your bag of screws, hardware. Now I am putting this together inside on the carpet so that I make sure that I don't dent this while putting it together. Casually mentioned to my husband, asked him if he could go to the UPS box, see if we had any packages, knowing that this was probably there. When he went to check the box, it said that there were no packages, so he left and started walking to the van, and he was at the van, like across the parking lot, when someone from the UPS store came running out after him and caught him at the van before he was about to get in and told him that this package was there for him and he had to come get it. So he came back and he said that this giant box was sitting in the middle of the store. He wasn't so thrilled. He had had a long day at work and was tired and didn't really want to be carrying this gigantic box now across the parking lot. Spouses of beekeepers. There should be a support group for them. They're the best. Okay, so first we're going to put the extractor on its side to put the legs on. So remember, gently do that so that you do not dent your extractor. Come back here. What you're going to need to assemble this is a screwdriver and ratchet. I'm just going around, now that I've stood it up, going around one more time and making sure that, I'll talk once I'm not making loud banging noises. Stood the extractor up, and now I'm going around one more time to make sure that these bolts are tight so that the legs don't start to get loose while it is wobbling around and spinning the frames. 14 millimeters. So when you're putting this together, you're going to have these two pieces. One piece is going to be just clear with the handle. That's going to go on one side. The other piece is going to be clear with the handle, but it's also going to have this little square piece over here. That's going to go on the side that has this little white button. And finally, what you want to do is put the gate on. The gate comes with the extractor, and you want it on so that the handle lifts up, or you'll see that there's a picture of a little bee on the front of it. You want the bee upwards, not on her head or his head, not sure. So you close the gate, and then you want to tighten it. You're going to put it in the hole, and then you're going to take this part It is very, very important that this is on nice and tight and that this is closed and locked. If it's not and you start running your extractor, honey is going to come pouring out. Now, before you do all this, if you buy one of these extractors, wash the plastic part, the lid, and wash the gate before you put it on. My hands were gray after putting this extractor together, so the entire extractor needs to be washed, which it states in the directions to wash before using. When washing your extractor, you're gonna have to take it apart. But what you're gonna wanna do is take the lid off with the motor. So for that, there are some nuts right here that you're going to unscrew. And if you do need a socket wrench to take these off because they're on too tight, the 14 millimeter wrench that you use to put the legs on is the same size that you use for these. So you're going to unscrew all of these, and then you're going to lift this center part up and off so that you can take the inner basket out and wash it, as well as the inside, without getting the motor wet. And you're going to take the inner basket out. Now there is a ball bearing that goes under this, inside the hole in the center of your extractor. If it is attached to the bottom of here, or you hear it fall out and down into your extractor, put it back down into the center hole. Make sure you're never turning your extractor onto its side to the point, or upside down to the point that that ball bearing is falling out, because you really need that. So once you're done washing this, you're going to put this back in, and this part goes back onto the ball bearing. So what you want is food grade lubricant to put a tiny little bit on the bottom. Now that our extractor is clean and put together, we're ready to harvest. To put the extractor back together, you put the basket back in the extractor, you make sure the ball bearing is in that little hole, and you put this back on top. This was a huge pain in the butt. Putting these bolts back on top, getting the extractor to line up with these bolts was really annoying. And my husband and I, it took us about 15 minutes to get it on together and to figure out how to squish these things into the holes. So now that we're ready to extract, I washed all my equipment and the extractor the day before, so I know everything is dry. Honey does not mix well with water. It will cause it to ferment, and especially if you live in a humid environment like I do, you really want to make sure that your equipment is dry and that your honey is capped. So we have our extractor, whether it's an electric or hand crank. I have a strainer that is the bucket size, so it's going to go on our bucket. I also have my 5-gallon honey bucket. You want to make sure it is food grade, whatever container you're putting it in, not just a 5-gallon bucket from a hardware store. I have my bread knife. You can also use other uncapping tools. They have uncapping knives, decapping knives from beekeeping supply sites. I've used them, but I find that it just takes a lot of the comb off, so I prefer to use a bread knife. And you can use a fork, or you can use one of those little metal pick things that they have, which again, I prefer to use the fork. I feel like it takes a lot less of the wax off, destroys less comb. You're also going to want a container to decap your frame, and there are lots of places where you can buy a tub that has a little shelf on it specific for beekeepers for uncapping, or this I got from a restaurant supply site. And then I also have a gigantic baking sheet, which I also got from a restaurant supply site. And I like to put my frames, they call them wet frames, after they've been spun, I put them on this tray, and then I bring them all outside at once. And then I'm not dripping anything all over the floor. Here I have my frame. It is capped. You want to make sure that you do not take frames that are under 70% capped, because your honey could ferment. There might be too much moisture in there. This is, I'd say, like roughly 70% capped, a little bit more. You don't really want to go with anything less than this. And when I say capping, that means the area that has a wax capping over the cell versus the area here which does not have a wax capping and is open, so you can see inside it. I'm going to do this left-handed even though I'm a righty, so that you can see. You want to just thinly slice off this top wax capping. Ideally, you don't go taking off too much. You see, just enough that you can still see your knife. You know, people have lots of different things that they use to make this process go faster and easier. I just don't care. I don't know. It never takes me all day, but I'm not harvesting from hundreds of hives. I have a lot less hives, and I do mostly comb honey, and that's because there's a honey packing company here that needs comb honey, and they will take as much of it as I can give them. So I don't really see the point to doing other stuff when I can do comb honey, and I already have someone that wants to buy it from me. I used to sell wholesale to some of the grocery stores, and on the island as well, but it just became a real pain in the butt making all those deliveries, and they only wanted like 2 or 3 cases. Once you are done with the knife, and especially if you have frames where the comb is really bumpy, you're going to want to take a fork or the little metal pick tool and scratch the cappings. Now, what some people do is they just take their fork and go like this and scrape it, but I like to put the fork, slide it under the cappings, and that way you don't destroy as much of the comb. All right, so as you can see here, you can see through some of this frame, and that's because there is no foundation, there is no wire, there is no beeswax foundation, there's nothing in here to keep this strong, so we'll see how this one does in the extractor. Now we're gonna put our frames in the extractor. We have our gate closed and locked, we double checked it. Now this one door has a magnet so that it stays open, so you can put frames in. The other side falls back down. So inside you have a basket, and the basket holds up to 4 frames. What we're going to do is take our frame and put it in the basket. You know, ideally you want to take frames that are of similar weight. If you're only doing 2 frames, you want to do 2 frames opposite sides of each other. Oops, someone left this on. Set it to 0, then turn it on. And then this is adjustable, the speed, it goes from 0 to 100. So we're going to start slow. Right now it's at 20. Now it's at 90. Now it's at top speed, which is 100. Super quiet, even at top speed. So let's take a look. You'll see the frame, the part of the frame that was facing the outer part. Looks pretty good. So we're gonna flip it around and put it back in, because this is not a radial extractor. It does not extract honey from both sides of the frame. Since these are shallow frames, they're gonna go right in the center. And then we're going to spin this, and we're gonna do the other one. I'm just doing 2 frames right now, but you'll see that there's a hole here for a 3rd frame and a hole here for a 4th frame. Once you're done extracting, you open up the gate so that the honey pours out, and you can put a 5-gallon bucket under it. But I had it on the shorter setting so that I could video inside the extractor. So I had it pouring down into another container, and I am now going to close the gate. And pour it, pour it over the strainer. This is my review overall of the Vevor 4-frame electric extractor. As far as sound is concerned and the extraction process, the thing works great, at least for the first time around when I've used it. It is really quiet, it hardly shook, and even when it was at 90, 100%, it was hardly shaking at all and really quiet. I it took a while to shoot this entire video because I was waiting until my husband was home to watch the kids while I used the extractor, because I thought it would wake up the baby when she was napping. But that wasn't the case. I could have run this extractor when the baby was napping and not worried about it waking her up. The only time it really started to make a loud clanking noise when spinning was when I had just one frame in there that had just a little bit of honey left. I'd taken the other frames out and I spun it, and it made a little bit of a clanking noise. So if your frame, the weight of your frames are different by quite a bit, and you have a frame that's really light and a frame that's really heavy in there, it's going to clank around a whole lot more. And of course, when you are using 4 frames, that can be a lot harder to do. But when you are running just 2 frames and the weight of the frames is fairly balanced, it's really quiet. It's really easy to use. It has that one power button, then it has the knob to make it go faster and faster. It's great that it can go, you can change the speed. It's not just medium, high, and low. I use frames that do not have foundation in them, and all of my frames spun just fine using this extractor. I started slow and then sped it up. The frames spun and the honey came out at 60%. You just have to run it for a little bit longer. And when I say a little bit longer, I mean it was in there for like 1.5 minutes, not like 10 minutes, pretty short amount of time in order to get the honey out. The frames were really light. They look like they have almost no honey in them anymore. So as far as it doing its job, which is extracting honey from your honeycomb, it does a great job. The cost is really cheap. Plus there is a coupon code down below. So use the link down below and the coupon code for an extra 5% off. They shipped to me here in Hawaii. It arrived in less than a week. And it also comes with the legs. If you want to buy an extractor that's electric, that is 4 frames, you're looking at most websites. The cheapest I found at other places was $700. A lot of extractors do not come with legs, so then you're buying a stand for it. That might be another like $75-ish. The thing is that when you buy from some of these other companies, they're beekeeping supply companies, and they are in the United States, so customer support tends to be a little bit easier. And also there are parts that you can buy. So I found that with other extractors, you can buy a hand crank, but then later on you could buy just the motor to attach to it. Or if your motor breaks, you might be able to buy a new motor. Or if you lose that ball bearing inside, some beekeeping supply sites sell that ball bearing. And a lot of the higher end extractors come with decent set of instructions on and user manual so that you can use it properly. So at the lowest setting, you're looking at almost 36 inches tall from the ground. If you put the second setting, you're adding another about 4.5 inches to it. So that's enough at the second setting, the highest setting, that you can empty it into a 5-gallon bucket below. The legs also have a hole at the bottom in the feet so that you can bolt the legs to a piece of plywood. The extractor can fit shallow frames, which is what I spun, but you can also put medium or deep frames into your extractor. The basket can hold all 3 different sizes in each of the 4 different baskets. One thing that I really did not like, that was not good whatsoever, is that, well, one, the construction of this part, how you attach the cover onto it. I don't like that the plastic lids do not come off the metal part where the motor is. And see, you can see that it is not so easy to get this lid on. I hate it when they'll just say in the directions wash, but then they don't explain how to wash it or consider the fact that it is a huge pain in the butt to wash. Okay, so when Mine arrived, it was all, you know, this part was intact. I just attached the lids like you saw in the video. But when I took this off, I saw that this motor was actually just wobbling around. So the motor is attached to this metal piece when it comes, and there are these screws that hold the motor to this metal piece. Those screws were loose and one of them is missing. Now I just extracted 4 frames and this thing is on really tight and not loosening up, but over time I'm sure it will be loosening up and you're just going to have to keep on tightening it. That's not a huge deal because you have to take it off anyway when you're washing it. This lid has the magnet so that it stays open when you're putting it in. The other side doesn't, so there's just one side that you really want to use to put frames in and out, and it has the auto stop button right here. So when you open up the lid, it's going to automatically stop the extractor. However, there is another side that does open as well, and you can open that side and stick your hand in and it's not going to automatically stop the extractor. The extractor is stainless steel. The barrel is 0.6 millimeters thick. They say it is rust proof. The inner basket is 26 centimeters. The barrel height is 24 inches and the barrel diameter is 20 inches. It fits frames that are up to 9.2 by 17.3 by 19.2 inches, which is a deep frame.
The motor's good. It's a brushless motor, similar to like in a DeWalt drill or something like that. So it'll last a while. It's efficient. It's on a variable speed drive, which is nice. Again, it helps for the life of the motor itself. You can dial it down. You don't have to run it full steam.
So that'll make the motor last longer?
It does, because if it wasn't on a variable speed, the startup and shutdown kind of wear and tear on the motors more. So these help. It's the soft start variable frequency drive. It's a cheap one, but it works okay. Also helps with the noise. Let's see. The plate screws, the way the motor is mounted to the back of the plate is okay. We were missing a screw.
It's not loose though after.
It's not loose, and now that we've ran it, there isn't much vibration, so it probably won't loosen up. But it would be nice if there were just some lock washers to lock that bolt in, because if it does happen to loosen up, a machine screw, a stainless machine screw, will back out really fast, and then if it drops in your honey, that's not good.
So overall, this is the deal with this extractor. It is less than half the cost of every other 4-frame electric extractor I have found personally from United States beekeeping supply sites. It spins honey. It spun frames of honeycomb that had no foundation and no wire in it. It worked well. It was really quiet. It hardly shook, and it handled the weight of the 4 frames. It does exactly what you need it to do. The downside is that when it comes to long term, if you lose that ball bearing, if something happens to the motor and you want to replace the motor, that is not an option with this. You can save yourself $500+ and buy something like this if you really need an extractor in a pinch, or if you just have a handful of hives and you really don't want to do that hand crank, or have the physical ability to hand crank your frames, and give this a shot. But if you have, 10+ hives and you want something for long term, this is probably not going to be the best option for you. It's not for somebody that doesn't have bees yet and is just looking to get all their equipment set up in advance, or someone who only has 1 or 2 beehives. This is overkill. You do not need such a large piece of equipment that harvests 4 frames at a time. Thanks for watching my video. If you have one of these extractors, please leave your review in the comments. If you have a hand crank and like it, please leave information about what you like about having a hand crank in the comments. Hand crank extractors are also great because there is no motor to break, so they last a whole lot longer. And if you have a extractor that is electric, please tell us what you think about it and if you recommend it. I'd really love this video to not just be a review of the Vevor extractor, but a place that people get information about all different kinds of methods for extraction. Don't forget to check out all my other honey harvesting videos. Links are down below in the video description. Thanks for watching. Bye. Here's your microphone. Put it right here and you can say what you think about the extractor.
Actually, it just been hanging around inside this. There's also some balls inside your tip builder. And it's hard to get this glue because actually it will just